The whole country is going to get blown up. Those are not the words of a military analyst. Those are not the words of a national security advisor giving a classified briefing. Those are the exact words of the President of the United States, spoken on Sunday, April 19, 2026, to a Fox News correspondent on live television. If they do not sign the deal, the whole country is going to get blown up. Trump also said the United States is preparing to hit Iran harder than any country has ever been hit before. He said the U.S. has massive amounts of ammunition. He told Iran's leaders that they almost do not learn. He set a new deadline of Wednesday, and he sent his entire diplomatic team, J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner, flying back to Islamabad, Pakistan, for a second round of peace talks. There was just one problem. Iran had already announced it was not coming. Iran's official state news agency, IRNA, said the claims that Iran was heading to Islamabad were not true and described Trump's announcement as a media game and part of the blame game to pressure Iran. And while Trump was telling Fox News the whole country is getting blown up, his Navy was simultaneously putting cannon shells through the engine room of an Iranian cargo ship called the Tuska in the Gulf of Oman. Threats, blockade, seizures, talks that one side announced and the other side rejected, and a new Wednesday deadline that the world has already heard before, on a Tuesday, and on another Tuesday, and on the Tuesday before that. The mainstream media is covering this as a diplomatic story. What it actually is the moment this entire negotiation broke down in public, in real time, on a Sunday morning, and most people watching the news did not even realize it. Let's go back to how we got here because the sequence matters and it tells you something critical about why Iran walked away from the table and why Trump's latest threat landed differently than the ones before it. The first round of U.S.-Iran talks in Islamabad on April 11th and 12th lasted 21 hours and produced no deal. Vance flew home. Iran would not commit to abandoning its nuclear program. Trump responded by launching a naval blockade of all Iranian ports on April 13th, with over 10,000 American troops and more than a dozen warships deployed to halt all economic trade into and out of Iran by sea. Iran called it piracy. Iran's army threatened to shut down the entire Persian Gulf. Then, on April 17th, following a Lebanon ceasefire that briefly changed the diplomatic weather, Iran announced the Strait of Hormuz was completely open. Oil prices dropped 12%. Stock markets jumped. For about 45 minutes, the world felt like something had shifted. Then Trump announced the blockade was staying in full force. Iran closed Hormuz again on Saturday, April 18th in response. And then Sunday happened. On Sunday morning, April 19th, while the USS Spruance was tracking the Iranian cargo ship Tuska across the North Arabian Sea, Trump told Fox News the whole country is going to get blown up if they do not sign. He said the U.S. is preparing to hit Iran harder than any country has ever been hit before. He said he hopes Iran takes the deal, and he announced the U.S. team was heading back to Islamabad. Hours later, IRNA published Iran's response, not coming, and Iran did not stop there. Iran's official news agency listed exactly why: Washington's excessive demands, unrealistic expectations, constant shifts in stance, repeated contradictions, and the ongoing naval blockade, which Iran considers a direct violation of the ceasefire agreement. 4 reasons, all of them publicly stated, all of them pointing to the same conclusion. Iran does not believe the United States is negotiating in good faith, and Iran is not going to sit down for a second round of talks while Trump is simultaneously threatening to blow up the whole country and parking Marines on Iranian cargo ships. Here's the detail that the headlines are glossing over and that changes everything about how you need to understand this moment. During the first round of Islamabad talks 2 weeks ago, Iran clearly told J.D. Vance to his face that public threats of the kind Trump was making would not be tolerated in the future. That is, according to an Iranian official who spoke directly to DropSite News. Iran sat down in Islamabad and said, "We can talk, but the public threats have to stop." Vance heard that. The entire American negotiating team heard that. Trump was in contact with Vance, by his own account, a half dozen to a dozen times during those 21 hours of talks. And then on Sunday, April 19th, Trump went on Fox News and said the whole country is going to get blown up. That is not a negotiating mistake. That is not an off-the-cuff comment that can be walked back with a press statement. That is the President of the United States, fully briefed on what Iran said in private negotiations, choosing to make exactly the kind of threat that Iran said would collapse the next round of talks. And Iran responded exactly the way it said it would. An unnamed Iranian official told Dropsite News that Tehran is prepared for a long war. The same official said Iran negotiators would prefer a deal, but that the deal has to be meaningful and the framework has to be defined in advance. Not announced on Truth Social, with a new Wednesday deadline every week. That word meaningful is doing enormous work in that sentence. It means Iran is not coming back to Islamabad to sit across from Vance again and listen to the same American demands, while Trump is simultaneously threatening to destroy Iranian civilization on Fox News. Now let's look at the numbers behind this breakdown, because the numbers tell you something critical about the pressure building on both sides that makes this moment so dangerous. Trump said the naval blockade is costing Iran $500 million a day in lost revenue. The Iranian government assessed its total war damage at $300 billion and possibly as much as $1 trillion. Iran's entire annual military budget before this war was about $8 billion. The blockade is eating through $500 million of Iranian economic capacity every single day. That is the American leverage. But here is Iran's leverage, which is just as real. The Strait of Hormuz, when opened before this war, carried about 20% of all the world's oil and about 20% of all liquefied natural gas. Right now, it is carrying a fraction of that. Oil prices surged faster in March than in any conflict in modern history, hitting a peak of over $126 per barrel at the worst point. The IMF said every 10% rise in oil prices adds 0.5% to global inflation. That means every American paying rent, buying groceries, filling up a gas tank, is paying the price for this standoff every single day. A new NBC News poll published on April 19th, the same day Iran rejected the talks, found that 67% of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of the war with Iran. 67%. That is not a political number. That is a pain number. That is 67% of Americans saying this war is costing them something they can feel, and Iran knows that number. Iran's official assessment of the American position, published publicly by Iranian state media, was blunt. Our assessment is that Trump effectively lacks both a coherent plan and the capacity to secure even a temporary agreement. That is Iran saying directly that they believe Trump is losing the home front even while threatening to blow up theirs. What makes the whole country is going to get blown up threat different from every previous threat in this war, and there have been many, is the context in which it landed. Trump said a whole civilization will die tonight on April 7th, right before the first ceasefire was announced. He threatened to blow everything up before the Islamabad talks. He threatened power plant day before the ceasefire. Every one of those threats was followed by an extension, a delay, a new round of talks, a claimed breakthrough. Iran has watched that pattern play out repeatedly. But this time the threat came after Iran had already reopened Hormuz as a gesture of goodwill. It came after Iran had declined to come to Islamabad publicly. It came on the same day the USS Spruance was firing its 5-inch naval gun into an Iranian cargo ship's engine room. And it came one day after Trump had posted in all capital letters that the naval blockade will remain in full force and effect until the transaction is 100% complete. Iran looked at all of that together and concluded that the United States is not a reliable negotiating partner. The IRGC spokesperson said that Trump's rude rhetoric, arrogance, and baseless threats will not stop Iran from fighting. The IRGC said if attacks on non-civilian targets are repeated, retaliatory responses will be carried out far more forcefully and on a much wider scale. Iran's parliament speaker said it is impossible for others to pass through Hormuz while Iranians cannot. An Iranian hardliner in parliament said the ceasefire must not be extended because it only gives the United States time to rearm and reposition. Every signal coming from Tehran right now points in one direction. Iran is not in a mood to make concessions under the conditions currently on the table. And the condition that would have to change to bring Iran back to Islamabad, lifting the naval blockade, is the one condition Trump said in all capitals he will not change. So here is where this war actually stands as of today, April 20th, 2026. The ceasefire that was supposed to be in force for 2 weeks is expiring or already expired, depending on which day you count from. The second round of Islamabad talks has no confirmed date because Iran said it is not coming and described Trump's announcement as a media game. The naval blockade of Iranian ports is fully implemented with over 10,000 U.S. troops and a dozen warships and the first seized Iranian cargo ship already in American custody. Hormuz is effectively closed again. Oil is above $100. 67% of Americans disapprove of how this war is being handled. Iran says it is prepared for a long war. Trump says the whole country is going to get blown up. And the diplomatic team that flew 17 hours to Islamabad is either sitting in Pakistan waiting for Iran to change its mind, or already heading home. This is not a war that is close to over, whatever Trump is saying publicly. This is a war that is one bad decision, one miscalculation, one seized ship too many, away from the ceasefire collapsing completely and the bombs starting again. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Trump said the whole country is going to get blown up. Iran said erratic and not trustworthy. When two sides describe each other that way in public, what exactly happens at the next deadline?